That's okay. So, we kind of got together that night, and we were watching Don Kirshner's rock concert. Now, a bunch of you people out there are probably too young to remember that, but I partied with them that Friday, and then the next night was Saturday, and they had a show in Kent at the auditorium. So I went to that. And then the next night they played in Akron at the auditorium there, and I went to that, and then they played at the Smiling Dog Saloon in Cleveland. So I went up there and seen them there. And then I said my goodbyes to them. And the next day, I had just got a divorce from my first wife. I've been married 5 times. So this was my first wife. I had just got a divorce. I lost track. Probably because I'm stoned, But anyways, let me try to figure out where I was. We said our goodbyes, and I went home. I was staying at my parents' house at the time, where I still live. So my mother come out and she said, "Hey, somebody wants you on the phone." So I went out. It was Ed King, and he wanted to come out, and he wanted to know if I could hook him up with something to keep him awake for the drive home. So I said, "Yeah, come on out." So they came out, and Ed said, "Do you think you'd ever want to work for Lynyrd Skynyrd?" And I said, "Doing what?" Because I was never a roadie or been around music or nothing. I had a guitar, but I couldn't play the dang thing, So that was December 7th, so they were playing in Atlanta at Alex Cooley's ballroom for a New Year's Eve thing. So I knew a woman down in Florida, and she said, "Hey, you met Lynyrd Skynyrd, didn't you?" And I goes, "Yeah." She said, "Why don't you meet me in Atlanta, and we'll go to the show there at Alex Cooley's ballroom?" I goes, "Yeah, okay." So we went there, and from hanging around with them for those days, I knew how to finagle my way in the back door. So we showed up, and I came in the back door like I was part of the show, and stuck my head out from under Ed King's amp while they were playing. I said, "Hey, Ed, hey, remember me?" So after they got done playing, the weirdest thing happened. He went to Ronnie and asked Ronnie to hire me. And Ronnie said, "Are you out of your mind? You mean that Yankee that we met like a month ago?" And Ed said, "Yeah, but I think he'd do good." He goes, "All right, Ed, but he better, I'm gonna kick your ass." He said, "Man, I got people in Florida I've been promising a job for years and years, and you want to hire this Yankee from Ohio?" So anyways, I took off with him down to Florida, and we went to the place called the Hell House, you might have heard of, and we did some rehearsing, and then me and one of the roadies, Joe Barnes, jumped in that van and drove to Los Angeles, California, to the record plant, and that's where they did the second helping. And that was the first day I was there, and we loaded the equipment in, and I'm coming out, and who do you think the first person I run into but John Lennon comes walking in the door. And I said, "Do you know who you are?" And he thought that was kind of funny. So he went into the studio, and the band seen him, they all freaked out, and they just kind of quit what they were doing. Well, by that time, he had left, and on the way out, he asked me if I wanted to go to lunch with him. I said, "Yeah, cool." So the band came out and said, "What happened to John Lennon?" They said, "He just went across the street with one of your roadies, So that's kind of like my introduction to Lynyrd Skynyrd. It was just kind of like jumping on a rocket ship, and just kind of taking off, because that was right at the whatever that word would be to start of their career, But the song Lynyrd Skynyrd, the song Freebird, You know, that was, I don't know if you heard, but that, they did two Budweiser commercials where Lynyrd Skynyrd was used on both of them. And then shortly after that, I heard that they won the award for the, Freebird won the award for the greatest song ever written by an American band, you know? So then, I was on the airplane when it crashed, and I don't remember a lot about it because after the show in Greenville, I got pretty high, which I was kind of really known for that, you know, getting high after a show or during the show or whenever. So yeah, we got on the plane and we started playing cards, and we must have pissed off the limo driver the night before because they didn't show up to pick us up. Now I don't know if any of y'all watched Artemis's movie where they got the limos show up and we go out to Artemis's house and party before the plane took off. That didn't happen, you know. We were all hung over from the night before. We didn't have no drivers, and we had to call taxi cabs and vans and stuff to get to the airport. And we took off, and I came up the storage stairs on the back, and a guy named Mark Howard, he was sitting at the card table, which I normally play poker during the flights, but Mark slid over and let me get the aisle seat. So we were playing cards, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, after about 3 hours, they said, "Hey, we're almost out of gas, and we better prepare to crash." So we kind of prepared to crash, and I'm looking out the window, and I see this pipeline, and I'm going, well, we're just going to land in this pipeline, where they laid out these gas lines. I said, man, this is going to be like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, we're just going to land in this field, knock the wings off. And how in the heck are we, because that's before cell phones. I said, how the hell are we going to get taxi cabs out here in the middle of this pipeline to pick us up, so for some unknown reason, they tried to turn around and we crashed in this field, and I was knocked unconscious for like 2 weeks, And I woke up and they didn't tell me what actually all had happened for a while until I kind of figured out, and then they told me that Ronnie and Steve had died, and I said, well, at this point it's over, So I just kind of left the hospital. But since then, I've just been kind of like selling memorabilia on eBay, which I still do every Sunday night. I sell this, that, and the other thing that kind of Lynyrd Skynyrd oriented on eBay, and then I do this thing called the Stone Roadie Show every week. I've done 353 episodes of the Stone Roadie Show. And that all happened because I was on Facebook and people wanted me to write a book. I said, I'm too stupid to write a dang book, But this guy from Music Explorer magazine wanted me to do an interview with him. I said, yeah, okay. So then I said, what do I need? He said, well, you need a microphone and a camera. And I said, okay. So I got that, and then he got COVID and just about died. And here I am with this microphone and a camera. And I have this friend of mine who's actually worked for NASA. He was in charge of taking the space shuttle out to the launch pad. Whatever. And so he said, well, people always say I know you and want me to ask you questions about, Skynyrd stuff, why don't you just let me interview you? And I said, yeah, okay. So we decided to do this podcast, and we did a couple of them, and people said, well, you guys are going to be millionaires doing this podcast because it's really good. So, are they out here yet? Oh, there they are. All righty then, looky here. We got with us tonight one of the best Lynyrd Skynyrd tribute bands in the nation. And here we are. Please welcome Mr. Breeze. Oh, okay. The sound guy is still working on something. So they're not quite ready. Okay, now they're ready. Why don't you just change my mind? All right, here they are, Mr. Breeze.